Small Acts, right? Yeah. It's 6 standalone stories of London, England, right? Mm-hmm. Or should I say Notting Hill, England. Okay. But the first episode is out, directed and written by Steve McQueen, right?
He did 7 Days a Slave.
Yes, he did 7
years.
12
years. 12 years a slave.
Mm-hmm. Didn't he do? Who did Moonlight? Was that him?
No, that was I can look him up, but it was a
but he's done guy. A couple of more films.
Yeah, he did the show also on ABC that we
watch, right?
Yeah.
So Lolita Wright is Thea Jones in this one. Sean Parks is Frank. Malachi Kirby is Darcus Howell, with an ensemble cast. Yeah. It has to do with the Mangrove 9. It was a trial in England, right?
Yep.
Of the Mangrove 9, right?
Yep.
The Mangrove 9, there was a protest because the British police which are called the Bobby, were always blowing down on Caribbean Brits who had moved from the Caribbean islands and who were living in England around the Notting Hill area to make a better way for themselves, right? And so the police were always picking and blowing down on them and causing harassment. And the harassment focused around this particular restaurant called the Mangrove. So let's go through the synopsis.
Well, before you go into the synopsis, so Steve McQueen, he did 12 Years a Slave, and we also reviewed one of his films, Widows,
okay, that's right. So Mangrove Restaurant, Notting Hill, London. It's 1968, and Caribbean blacks in London, to make a better way, find it hard to be self-determined with constant harassment from the English Bobby police. One man must make a decision to stand up or take a deal, right? So in other words, stand up or take a dive, right? So what you learn about Small Acts is this is a 2-hour and 8-minute movie, and Steve McQueen, not to be mixed up with this guy right here who passed so long ago, Steve McQueen. Not that Steve McQueen.
When I looked him up, he came up.
Not to be mixed up with Steve McQueen,
the American
from the
actor,
60s and 70s, who died in a car crash. No, we're talking about Steve McQueen, the black filmmaker.
Yes.
He tells this story well through images. Matter of fact, he's a little artsy in this. There are some scenes that we count out and they go longer as far as reaction. In my opinion, they go a little longer than what they should, but it's Arthur's choice. It was his choice to deliver it and tell the story that way. So I go with it and I say it's good. This is on Amazon Prime, right? So what happens is a Caribbean faction of the Black Panthers, inspired of course by Malcolm X and Mobutu, and of course the Black Panthers that were happening in the United States, start a chapter there to fight and protest against the brutality of the Bobby. And there is a particular Bobby,
Right.
which I didn't even list his name because he played it too well. It seemed like to me, came in natural.
Oh my
so
gosh, he was so irritating.
It's not like it's acting when you can play it too well. So I didn't even list his name, right?
He played it too well, didn't he?
So
it was all in his face. His face was just.
So yeah, it was all in his face, and he had the two of the members decide to represent themselves in the trial, because this is one thing that they teach you. Feds magazine taught me this, right? Feds magazine said, and they had defense attorney, black defense attorney they interviewed, and the free defense attorneys, right? The public defenders are set in place to move the system along. So they're always going to tell you to take a plea, 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 take the deal, take the deal, take the deal. Their purpose is to keep the system running smooth, because if everyone goes to trial, there will be a bottleneck,
Right.
and they would never adjudicate all of the cases because there will be so many people, because this is a system to make money, so it will be so many people who are under prosecution that they would never be able to clear out the docket, right? So that's why public defenders are made to do that. So reading the Feds magazine and knowing that and applying it to this film, Small Axe Mangrove, right? The Small Axe first episode, Mangrove,
Right.
and each one deals with certain human beings that come into existence at a certain time that are amongst the people who have to make a decision.
Right.
And when they make the decision
Right.
to stand up,
Right.
they find that possibly greater outcomes come from it, right? So this is what these 6 stories are about, right? The first one is airing now, called Mangrove.
Yeah.
So the man was harassed, and he was indicted. They were let go the year before, but the following year the Brits came up with some kind of new law, and then they charged them, they indicted them on that law,
Right.
to try to put them in jail for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
Prison for 10 years.
Right.
And they had to fight tooth and nail against it. In between, there is doubt, but there is self-determination.
Yeah.
And through that self-determination, well, you just have to watch Mangrove, the first episode
Yeah.
of Small
Yeah.
Axe, right?
Yeah.
It's well put together.
Well
But I
put
will say, the man was indicted 3 times, right? And he was
Harassed for 18 years.
18 years, indicted 3 times. So you have to watch the story, right?
Right.
It's incredible. It's just incredible. And finally, in the end, in 1992, remember now, Mangrove is the heart blood of the Caribbean,
Yeah.
and the various blacks, because you see various blacks coming out.
Yeah.
You see the Hebrew Israelites, you see the Panthers, you see the Caribbeans, you
Yeah.
see the British blacks. You see all the different groups coming together in this street, which is a block.
Right.
And the way that they pull out and show you that this block,
Right.
where this story surrounds,
Right.
Notting Hill.
Yeah.
So he finally closes in 1992, right? The Mangrove shutters for good. And then Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. We just reviewed Hugh Grant and what's her name?
And Nicole Kidman.
Last week, right? So 7 years later,
The Undoing.
7 years later, Notting Hill movie is released,
Right.
right? and it's a regentrified Notting Hill. Sometimes when there's a tour de force in a place, it's no longer the same. The energy isn't there. So the Caucasian system will often overtake and take over what they wanted, what they thought was theirs all the time, over time, because there is no passing of the torch, because either there is no one who has showed loyalty enough to pass on to.
Wow, that sounds familiar.
Or there's no camaraderie.
Right.
And so the person ends. So in 92, and then in 1999, 7 years later, Notting Hill comes out representing Notting Hill as a regentrified area.
Wealthy.
Unbeknownst to people like us who went to go see the Julia Roberts
had no
film.
idea, because in the film, Notting Hill is a wealthy area, a privileged area, right?
And then they have some blacks walking through there, but back in the time from 1968 to 1992, before the regentrification, it was predominantly black.
Yeah, it looks like it was predominantly black, predominantly Caribbean, right?
Right, Caribbean black. So people, let's go through the breakdown. Cinematography is a 10.
Yes.
Storyline, through line is a 10.
Right.
Character arc. The way that these characters go from one level, like, it's one thing to talk about black liberation. It's another thing to be beset upon by the forces of oppression.
Right.
And do you crack?
Right.
Do you stand strong? That's where the rubber hits the road. Do you stay strong? So the character arc is 10. Acting skill, emoting. All of the actors in this film bring home stellar performances. Everything, speaking of believability, is believable. So acting skill, emoting 10. Wardrobe and the cars of the period, all of the people of the period, the music.
Yes.
That's a 10.
Yeah.
Locations, Notting Hill.
Yeah.
The police precinct.
Yeah.
That's a 10.
Yeah.
Story beats, connecting the liberation talk to actual practical self-determination in action. That's 10. Believability, said that, 10. Historical facts showing you Notting Hill from 1968 with the influx of Caribbean blacks into Britain, living and populating that area of Notting Hill.
Right.
That's a 10. What would you give Small Axe?
Definitely a 10. Great film. I can't wait to see the second film. What I loved about it is like the energy of the people, right? So, you know what? When I was watching this film and the characters, right? So Jamaican, Trinidadian, and the main character, the owner of the restaurant, his name was Frank, right? And he was from Jamaica. And he reminds me of a friend of ours that passed away. And they both had the same energy. Was arms open to the community. Loved their people. And fought for what was right. Right?
Right.
And what I loved is... I'm not going to give it away, but there's this one scene where a Trinidadian older woman comes in.
Oh, yes.
After like the gloom.
Yeah, there's a big gloom.
And she does something just so beautiful, right? And so it just, I don't know, it was just well done. And it just gives you the energy of the Caribbean people, because and then if you look back at people's lineage, like, okay, so Malcolm X, his mother was from the Caribbean. His father was an American black. We know that
Louis Farrakhan,
also from the Caribbean, right?